Welcome to Girl Choose Yourself, where we're trading self-doubt for self-trust and settling for soaring. I'm Emer, your host, and together we're building the confidence to create lives so deliciously bold that they scare us a little, but in the best possible way. Because life's too precious to stay cozy in our comfort zones. It's time to choose ourselves for lives that are fabulous and soulfully fulfilling. So let's go. Welcome back to the podcast, and today I'm very excited to have my guest with me. Her name is Sarah Magnoni, and Sarah really has a story that I think will resonate with a lot of you today, because at the age of 51, she realigned her life and dedicated it to her passion really for travel at that time, and has built something that's really very exciting. I found her online and I was like, wow, you do that? That's really incredible. And I think many people are going to love what she's doing now and get excited and want to get involved, but they're also going to be very interested in the story too of what brought her to that point. So welcome, Sarah. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited that you reached out to me.
So you started your story. Where I want to start really is you were in a position that many of us find ourselves, where you were raising young children and your husband was traveling a lot. Lots of us have husbands or partners who travel a lot, but your husband traveled a lot because he was a pilot. So you really had everything going on. Can you tell me a little bit about that kind of stage of life and then transitioning beyond that and what that looked like for you?
Yeah. It's funny because when I think about it now, I mean, there's days that I think, I don't know how I did it with him traveling and having 4 kids. It was chaotic and crazy, but also fun. You know, it just became our lifestyle. I've always been really independent, mostly an only child. My brother was born when I was 13. So I think I liked that independence and being alone a little bit. And him traveling made it so that he doesn't want to travel. He no longer really wanted to travel. So as the kids were growing up, it became not like my responsibility, but we had places we wanted to go. So we still would have a family vacation. It's not that he wouldn't go, but a lot of the kind of additional travel, or if there was a cruise we wanted to go on, or there was something, then the kids and I would end up going on our own. So we had this, I guess it would be just kind of an agreement. His days off, he wanted to be at home in bed, like his own bed, his own house, not in a hotel. And my days off, as I grew in my career, when I did go back to work, I wanted to get out of the house. I was working remotely. So being here all the time, then I wanted to go places. And that just seemed to kind of work for us.
Yeah, I can definitely identify with that a lot because I raised 3 children. And although partner was not a pilot, he was traveling for work all the time. And then you are like, I just want to go somewhere.
Need a break.
I
Need to
want
get out
to
of
go
here. Yeah.
somewhere. So you went back to work when the kids had reached a certain age, when they were at school, I guess. And that was like a
Yes.
little bit easier with childcare and everything. And that worked for a while
Mhm.
until maybe it didn't. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well, as a woman
Yeah.
with kids going back into the workplace?
Yeah. I was really fortunate to have a company that was 100% remote during a time period that not everybody was remote. Like now I feel like that's a very normal thing, but I started there in 2011 and it was a completely remote company. So I had that flexibility when he was traveling, if the kids were in sports or I needed to drop them off or do different things. I really have that, again, I have that flexibility. I could go do those things. I feel like that took a big weight off of my shoulders because I could still, live in. I tend to be very driven and I tend to be somebody that wants to like take on more, do more, keep growing. And so within that role, I eventually moved up multiple levels and became the director over one whole department. And over that department and being part of the leadership team, I still put in 100%, was always doing. And then at one point, It was like, it looked like I had everything on the outside, but I was exhausted. I didn't find joy in anything. I wasn't excited about things. Everything felt like a chore. And so that's when I realized I was completely burning out. And at that point, I knew I had to make a change. In fact, talk about like walls closing in. That's kind of what that felt at that point too. Just didn't find any enjoyment in anything. I had just run out of steam.
Yeah, and it's such a familiar story as well because it's kind of like the myth of having it all that
Yes.
doesn't quite fit into life when we're living in the society, even with the amount of flexibility that you had was just sort of structured to lead us towards that burnout, that exhaustion, that kind of
Right.
there's just no space for me in here, and that lack of joy. So tell us a little bit about that feeling of, yeah, the walls have closed in. I'm just, I guess, empty. I just don't have anything to give. And it's just the next day and the next day. That feeling to then going to a decision, because that's a big decision as well. Did you put it off for a while? Did you find it
Oh,
difficult to
yeah.
take?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I remember talking to a friend of mine and saying that I had been like laying on the couch at night because we had also had this large reduction in force and most of my team was impacted. So also running that and the emotions attached to it. And I remember telling her that I had laid on the couch and I knew like I had this nudge, this feeling like you need to go. Like you're going to end up sick. This is not what you need to be doing. But this is all I had done. I didn't have, I don't have a bachelor's degree. I had moved up in this company and it was digital ad tech. So it was a technical company and I had done really well. And I did like the company and the teams, but I just didn't have anything left within me. And so I continued to ignore it. Well, in true Sarah fashion, because this would be like textbook for my personality, that when I do finally make up my mind about something, I'm just doing it, even if it's going to make somebody upset or uncomfortable. And so for me, it was this kind of once I decided, it was a lot of conversations with my husband. It was a lot of this is what I think I should do. And now, mind you, even though he was a pilot, he had been through multiple furloughs. So a long time I was the primary breadwinner. So this was a big change for me to be able to say, like, hey, kind of that golden handcuff feeling. But listen, I have to do something. And I took a lot of talking. And I think on a conversation on Friday, he was flying. And I remember saying, like, okay, well, as long as we're in agreement, I am going to text, my boss the next day on a Saturday. And I'm just going to let her know I'm going to put my notice in on Monday because I'd been there almost 9 years. So, and it was a continually growing company. And so I did that. In fact, I have an article coming out soon that talks about that whole experience. I texted her on Saturday morning, said, I just want to let you know I am going to give my notice on Monday and, let me know once you're online. Let's talk. This is what I would like. I kind of put out like a severance idea just because I had been there. Plus I had, some things I needed to take care of before I left. And that was it. Like I was done and I had already prior to that I had become ICF certified as a coach. Really liked coaching. I had an executive coach that really made a huge change in my life. I was coaching, my direct reports and helping them coach their direct reports. And so it was something that was really close to my heart. Like I knew it was life changing. And so I just decided I'm just going to go coach. I'm going to coach on my own. I don't need to work here. A lot easier said than done. As I was saying that, I'm thinking, I was like, yeah.
There's the freedom in the decision and just
Yes.
choosing yourself there, saying, like, my well being, my welfare. There's no
Yes.
joy here. It's just this. I have to be the agent of change here and kind of doing
Yes.
that. And I can imagine, like, the relief and the sense of empowerment of sending that message and just going, there it is, it's done after such a long run up to a decision like that. And then you're moving into this new area. Once you've made that decision and you deal with the housekeeping of the departure from that company that sounds like it had been very good to you, a lot of flexibility, a lot of growth and opportunity, but you're now pivoting to the coaching and to a new chapter. What age were you, Sarah,
What
when
age was I?
yeah, when you made that
This would have been
decision?
2019. So 7 years ago, 6 years ago. So 47, 47.
47. And so you're making that decision, and then you're going into coaching.
Hmm.
So how did that look like, that change? Because that was sort of the landscape from which the current business that we're predominantly going to be talking about,
Yes.
was born from that.
I look at that time period as a healing time period. First
Mm.
of all, I was extremely burned out. I jokingly say I slept for 6 months, but it's not really a joke. I would get up in the morning, I would feel exhausted, I would eat, do a few things, go take a nap. Same thing around lunch, then afternoon, go take a nap. I remember my husband saying at one point, like, I'm really worried there's something wrong with you because all you're doing is sleeping. I'm like, yeah, yes, there's something wrong with me. I am burned out. So, I started coaching. I was, very heavily involved in some different coaching circles and had a lot of friends that were coaches. And so, when coaches are around each other, they help each other. It's just such a great community, and people are trying to help you look at things differently and those kinds of things. And I really went down this healing journey of, I would say, self-love. It was about really connecting with who I was. In fact, we're on video right now, so you can see my office is pink. This is also like like a statement because it had always been gray. It had always been this kind of corporate color. If I was on Zoom calls, I needed to be professional. I wasn't going to have like Buddha behind me or anything like that. I was going to have like these very like corporate things. So I also kind of redid my whole office, like my identity with my office. I started coaching women. I thought I would coach women in leadership just because that's what my experience had been. And then I ultimately didn't. I started coaching around intuition. But what intuition really was a word that I used for self-love. Because when you connect with your intuition and you allow yourself to be intuitive, you're actually really just loving yourself and nurturing yourself. So really, and what I realized from helping all these women was that I was helping myself at the same time.
Mm.
Um, and so I started hosting retreats with coaching. And the first international retreat that I held was in France, and it was to go to the caves of Mary Magdalene. It was to do the pilgrimage, go up the mountain, and it was based on the book Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson. And that was a really empowering book for me. It was a book that I had always encouraged my clients to read. And it ended up, one of my clients said, would you ever think of taking us there? Because she knew I was doing retreats. And I was like, that is a great idea. Actually, I had been thinking about France. And so I, I sent out an email, and that was sold out within 18 hours. I had 10 women going to France. And that was really the start, I think, of where I am today.
I love that story. And I also read Megan Waterson's book and went, oh my goodness. As an Irish woman who had been brought up in Catholic Ireland, it was a revelation to me. So if any of my fellow Catholic girls who found themselves somewhat estranged from their church, you might want to dive into Megan Waterson's work and find a new connection to
Yeah,
Mary Magdalene and more. So very, very powerful.
very.
So that is so beautiful. I love at the beginning when you were describing the kind of healing journey of moving from an environment where you had been burnt out, and this idea of sleep and rest unapologetically, the
Mm.
need for women to rest and care for themselves and nurture themselves. And so often we are driven by so many external forces going, produce, be productive, keep going, wake up and grind and hustle. And it doesn't serve so many of us. Personally, I feel it's a very male sort of approach to how we move in the world and how we serve. And a beautiful thing also that you said was that you were sort of healing yourself through your service to others, which I think is just so beautiful as well, and so true, that when we connect into this interior self and we come from there as a place of service and we begin to trust it, and that what that can awaken in those people that we connect with. So that was really powerful from a leadership, from coaching retreats. Tell me, are you still doing those type of retreats? Because when I found you, it was cobblestones, castles and cobblestones, or cobblestones and castles?
The second one, cobblestones and
Cobblestones and castles. This is how I found Sarah online, and I was going, oh, first of all, I love that handle. What is she doing? And then I dived in and I looked at what your offering was, and I thought, this is beautiful. I haven't seen anyone taking quite this direction in serving women. So can you explain to our audience what exactly Cobblestones and Castles is offering, and what was the spark that led you to say, this is the thing?
Yeah. So I no longer host retreats in the way that I hosted them as a coach. The way that I look at like differentiating between like a group trip, a small group trip, which is what I do now, versus a retreat, is in my mind, a retreat, you're gathering to learn, be coached, or whatever. It's kind of this, it's a very, like, there's kind of a program, I guess, attached to it, like from someone, there's a teaching. Group trips for me, in my mind, are that the teaching is actually in the trips itself, in the what we're visiting, the tours, the guides, the people that we're learning from, the experiences that we have. Of course, I still use my coaching skill set, helping women connect with their intuition, because so much of where we go are within any history, there is like some magical piece of different things that you can't explain. You're from Ireland. Like, I feel like Ireland is full of it. But yeah, so what I do now is I host these small group trips for women, 6 to 11 women, or 6 to 10 primarily max. And they're all focused on historical feminism. So women that made a difference, suffrage movement, or Anne Boleyn, or, and maybe it's not always like a direct, maybe there's like an adjacent, like how, like oh, why can't I think of his name right now? Anne Boleyn's king, can't remember his name all of a sudden. But what a king may have done that may have influenced a queen or another woman or something to go out and make change, or, a woman that stood up. It can also be, so like, it could be Goddess Bridget. It could be, more mystical. It can be all of that, but also literature. So writers, I'm a huge fan of Virginia Woolf. So would really love to have, there will be a literary trip next summer, but it will be a little bit more Jane Austen. Things that are just going to bring women together to learn in a unique way and experience travel. So it isn't about like checking off a list, like, we've gone to these 5 places, so we can check this off as a group, right? We've immersed ourselves in the culture. We have met with locals. We've contributed or given back. Some of the trips that I'm looking at in the future will actually have opportunities where we can either give back to women in the community or do different things. So, but on the other side of that, it is also allowing women to go and travel in the most purest way, because they are not worried about if their kids are going to like it, or if their partner is going to be happy, or do they have to hurry up and go through Holyrood House Palace to get through because their husband's like, clicking his foot or something. Like, come on, let's hurry up, right? Like, they have space to explore. And then of course we have, not all, but most, we have meals together. And, we talk a lot about what we've learned, what we've shared, plus making connection and community with other women. So it is, like I said, it's designed to be, each experience is designed to be like based on a theme or a movement or a time period. Our upcoming trip to Scotland, that is all based on Scotland witches and the witch trials. And of course, there's also a taste of Scotland, and, just to immerse yourself in different ways. So yeah, I guess it's teaching, which I always knew that, but I think saying it out loud, some reason right now, is really solidifying it in my head. Like, yeah, they're learning in a different way.
I think that's such a wonderful idea, and particularly what you say about how women travel, and that particularly as women who've raised children, that we have had different types of trips and definitely had those experiences where, "Ooh, they're not going to be patient enough for this," or "I'll have to get up really early and do this thing before everybody else." So there's so much compromise in, there's beauty in them too, but there's often a lot of compromise in travel when you are going, even with a partner. They mightn't want to go to the same places as you. They might just have travel fatigue from the type of work that they do, and home is their vacation. And so I believe really that there is this hunger in women, particularly in middle age, that they are like, no, I want to do it just for me. I just want to unapologetically choose a trip. And what often can hold them back is, well, my friend doesn't want to do the same thing as me. And you're kind of polling your friends to see, is this your kind of thing? Is this your kind of thing? To get that group. But you're creating the container for these women to kind of find themselves. And tell me a little bit about the kind of connections, the type of that are formed on the trip, and the type of people that are finding you and kind of self-selecting into this environment and this type of travel.
Yeah. I mean, as far as, like relationships. So if I think about the Ireland trip that we have coming up, we have a really interesting mix there because we've got a couple of sisters, we have a couple of, mother and daughters. So we have some people that are traveling together, but we also have solo travelers, women that don't have someone else to travel with. And so they're going to be going along. And it's funny because when we think about midlife, that's really what I thought I was creating. I thought, okay, well, I'm creating kind of a 50 plus, and maybe not saying it exactly that way, but that was what what my thoughts were. And the reality is that I have clients that are 35 all the way to 80. So it's really every range and all different kinds of backgrounds. And women that either have never, similar to what you said, there's places they wanted to go and they didn't have anybody to go with. Women that want to experience solo travel, but within a group, because all of our trips also include chunks of time. And mostly I try to get at least one full day where maybe we'll, meet back up for dinner, but that whole day is there. So if they wanted to go do a day tour or they wanted to go do something on their own, but still with that safety of the group kind of in the background or somebody they can always contact. My client, they tend to be women that are either well educated or want to learn. Like I said earlier, I don't have a degree, but I want to soak up and learn everything. I want to know everything about Ireland. Ireland is kind of a staple. It's like every year, and I pick a different place. And so those women that maybe it's not Ireland for them, but maybe it's England or France. And so they just have this desire to learn. We talk a lot about, I have a free community on Facebook, and in there we talk about, we have a book club that talks about like historical fiction books. We talk about women, different things that women have done. It could be current, it could be past. And of course, we talk about travel, and we talk about solo travel. And so I had just done it's a small group right now, but I had just done a poll because I wanted to see like who has traveled solo and who hasn't. Some had, a lot of them wanted to. So I feel like this is kind of giving them permission, the women that are in there, if they're not fully ready to go on their own, but maybe, it's something you said earlier, which I can't exactly remember what you said, but it felt like it was a little bit around permission, right? That's one of the things that we struggle with. And I think what you were saying about like when we reach midlife, at least for me, I had this feeling of, okay, well, time is running out. Like, if we say midlife's 50, which it really isn't, but if we say midlife's 50, like I can only travel for so long. Like there could be mobility issues, something could happen. And so it's kind of like this, little fire under me that's like, come on, we gotta get out here and do these things. And I think women are feeling that, especially as their kids grow up, they go to college, they have their own lives, and creating kind of this space for them to travel and have it be safe. And they don't have to travel with me. It can be their own, like, I want to hear all about it. Like, tell me where you went and what you liked and what you didn't like. It's just encouraging women, because the feeling that you get after you travel, especially in a trip like this or a solo trip, is like an empowering feeling. I don't even know if right now I can explain it, but this feeling of like the ability to do anything. It's almost like, when I went to France, my first solo experience was in France before I hosted that retreat. I spent a weekend in Paris. And my husband kind of had to make me go. He kind of had to, he's like, you're gonna put on your shoes and you're gonna go. Because I was like, well, it's cloudy out, I'm tired. And he's like, no, you're there and you're gonna go. And when I came home, it was like I could conquer the world. Like I was in Paris by myself. I walked down the street. I went to the Eiffel Tower, but like all of these things, I drank a glass of wine and looked at the Eiffel Tower. It's something that for women that want to experience something like that, I hope they get the chance. And I'm just trying to help them.
Yeah, so powerful, that shift that comes from trusting yourself, from putting on your shoes, getting out the door and saying, I have this itinerary and I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to wait for it to be the perfect timing or for somebody to accompany me and me then have to accommodate them. I'll go fully in on this experience for me. And then you do find yourself sitting in the cafe looking at the Eiffel Tower and going, yay me, I'm
Yeah,
here by
I can't
myself.
believe I did this. Right.
I can't believe I did this. And I think that's something that's not talked about quite as much. And I really resonated with what you said earlier about when you were distinguishing this type of travel from so many other types of group travel, where it's, hey, I went and saw that. Check. I went and saw that. And let me post my picture on Instagram so that you can all see that I
Yeah.
did that, rather than,
Right.
here we are in this container, in this environment, exploring sort of the magical quality of some of these places, because that's what you're choosing them for. It's this, there's something here beneath the surface, there's
Yes.
something to sink into in this experience. And it's probably even more magical when you have this small group, this intimate group of women who are dipping into this and experiencing it together. I can imagine you have people who show up, they're not quite sure what it's going to be like, but they're like open. And then there's who they are when it's that final evening of all being together and having had this experience. What are some of the things that people have shared with you
Yeah.
on those final evenings, or maybe after they arrive back at home and they're just kind of letting it all sink in?
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard everything from, I always say the trip is a success if somebody has been crying. It's not that I want women to cry, but it happens every time. When someone starts crying, I'm like, we did it. But, the feeling of, I know one person had said, like, I would have never been able to even have gone to that exhibit if I were traveling with my family. The kids could have cared less, my husband wouldn't have cared, and I would have felt like, well, why would I go there just for myself? Why would I take time out of our vacation just to go do it? So I've heard that. I've had in France, I had women break down crying because they couldn't believe that they were being served by a private chef with this exquisite meal in the middle of a garden surrounded by flowers. And, like I remember one woman saying, like a year ago, this is what my life looked like, and it was all these bad things, and these things were happening. And now look at me. Like I am sitting in this garden eating this amazing meal, and I'm in France with some of the most amazing women. We have a group chat that we like stay connected to throughout. They go on for a long time. And a lot of those women have become really good friends. I just got a text the other day from someone that went on one of the trips, and it had someone else that had gone, and she said, my goal is to be able to travel with you guys again. And so, I think it does what it's supposed to do, which is it leaves this everlasting impact. And then I look at it like when you go and do that, when you start to take care of yourself and you see what's possible for yourself, whether you ever go on another trip like that, you're bringing it back, because most of my clients are in the US, you're bringing it back to your community. And that is trickling out, whether it's at home with your family, whether you show up with more patience, whether you have this sense of pride that maybe you didn't have before, this increased confidence that maybe you take to work with you, or maybe it's getting involved. I think that we have so much to learn. The US is so individualistic that when you go on these trips, you're building community. You also see how all of these other countries in Europe tend to be pretty community minded. That's one of the biggest things that I hear from women is everybody's so friendly, like, being approached on the street to try to help when you haven't asked for help, or, looking at all the women gather every morning to have espresso. in France, that was something that for me, even I was like, it's the same women every morning and they look beautiful, like fully dressed and like they're just sitting here enjoying themselves, right? Or being in a pub and somebody saying like, this is like somebody's family room, like the way they were just, it's those experiences we can bring back. And I think with everything going on in the world right now, that itself is a gift.
Yeah, seeing how things can be and how we can choose to be in the world, and
Yes.
that community and interdependence, and how that is a beautiful thing when we see it vibrant and alive in different cultures. It shows us what is possible
Yeah,
when we choose it.
absolutely.
I'm an absolute feminist, and I love that when you talk about travel, you use that term of historic feminism. How important is that when you are curating a trip to amplify the stories of women in history who maybe some of them very well known, some of them maybe not so well known. How important is that for you as the leader who's curating these trips? And to what extent is that a core attraction for the people who are coming on these trips?
Mm. Yeah, I think the women that are coming on the trips are interested in that. I don't, I mean, I would think that there would still be, I can tell you without a doubt, the Scotland trip, there's an opportunity to sit with the authors of How to Kill a Witch. And so what we have one evening with them, and I will say that right now is the reason that people are signing up for that. Plus, there's another author, The Last Witch of Scotland, that will be spending time with him as well. So I think, you know, in that case, like in Scotland, it is more of like that witch focused, but there is that feminist piece of understanding more about what a witch was considered. Yes, every trip has something to do with a historical feminist. There isn't, I wouldn't say, other than possibly for 2027, like the Jane Austen trip. I mean, I think that right now is the only trip that I have planned that is focused on one person. Everything else kind of intertwines. Like I said earlier, like maybe, like Oliver Wilde. So we would be, we have an academic guide. That's the other thing that I try to make sure we have academic guide. So in Dublin, we'll have an academic guide with us. So obviously, Wilds will come up, but also Lady Wilde, right? Like, and that's someone that I don't think a lot of people really know or knew about her. So making sure that those pops are in there if it's not fully focused. But definitely women are, that's kind of the core of who I am and what my goal is out of this.
So tell us a little bit about what's on the schedule for this year, for 2026. I know you have at least four trips. Can
Yes,
you
four
tell
trips
us
this year.
tell us a little bit about those four trips and maybe what is still available? Where are
Yeah.
there
Oh,
still
thank you. Yeah,
spots
that'd be
for
great.
people who are listening?
Yeah. So in June, June 7th through the 13th, we have Ireland's East and Dublin, because I'm a huge Dublin fan, like I told you earlier. And I do have one shared room left for that, plus one shared space, someone else that's going solo that is looking for a roommate. And that trip will be staying at Cashel Palace. We'll be going to Wicklow, so we'll be spending a lot of time out there. We'll also be dining with the Marquess of Waterford. So that's the other thing, the trips always include some type of exclusive event, something that maybe they wouldn't be able to or wouldn't go book for themselves. And then, of course, Dublin, we have a full day guide with an academic guide. And then in October, we do try to travel on off season, like kind of shoulder season. So in October, we have Spellbound in Scotland. That is the trip that's focused on the Scotland witch trials. And then that trip starts in Edinburgh, it goes up to Perthshire, and then goes up to Inverness. That trip is all single rooms, and I think we have six left for Scotland. So just started promoting that. We also in October are going back to the Caves of Mary Magdalene. It's going to be a very similar setup. It's the same. We actually usually I book boutique hotels. This particular one we are going to stay in the same villa that we stayed at in the past because it was built in the 1300s and was a home to cardinals because we are in Avignon, which is an area that had a pope that was there for a while. So it's a walled city. I also have other hosts And this particular trip will be hosted by a different host. She actually is an expert in the divine feminine. And so she will be the guide for that trip. And that trip, we have four, four shared rooms left. And then November 15th through the 21st is a holiday in England, and that is Cotswolds. It's kind of this cozy Christmas feel, but we will also be going to is it Sudley Castle, Oxford, and Bath. And we have some exclusive experiences there as well. And that one just came online, but I think we only had three single rooms for that one. I believe they're all booked, so we have two shared rooms left for that one.
Perfect. So still a little bit of availability throughout those trips. And when you mentioned Cashel Palace, just for the listeners, I've been and stayed in Cashel Palace, and it's like one of the best hotels like in the world. It is phenomenal. So a very special trip. All of them sound incredibly special, actually. So when you think about this period of your life, did you imagine this 20 years ago as something? Was there a flicker of this interest?
Always an interest in travel. I had mentioned when I was a lot younger, like, oh, I would love to be a travel agent, but not this, not to the, I'm also a writer, and my husband has always encouraged me to write, but again, it was one of the things that I always put to the side because the kids growing up, and I was in college at one point, and I had a professor reach out about something I had written, and so I always put it to the side. So I like to view this time period as like kind of all the creativity pieces just coming together. In fact, like I just created some content that talks about being accused of always having my head in the clouds. Because I
Mm.
have been told that so many times, but I think the fact that I am a dreamer is what made has made who I am right now and what I'm creating right now. Because if I hadn't dreamt about how amazing some of these trips could be, that if I hadn't have dreamt, wow, I wonder if I could have the Witches of Scotland spend an evening with us because I love their book, that wouldn't have happened. Right? So yeah, so I no, I mean not definitely not to this level. And I go to bed every night and it's kind of like a gratitude list, I guess you could say. I don't look at it the way it's joy is how look at it, like the joy that I have. And so I go to bed with this feeling of joy of the fact that I get to do this, that I get to create this, and I get to bring women with me. Because when I was in Scotland last fall, I remember standing there at one point and thinking, it will never take my ability to travel for granted because, as we talked earlier, we can't travel for, there will probably become a time where we can't. And yeah, it's just too important that's why I always say take the trip. It doesn't have to be this trip, but it could be a weekend. It could be, just get out of your normal surroundings. But yeah, no, I could have never dreamt that it would be what it is right now.
I've read the Witch's book too, and I was in Scotland last year, traveling around, and I read that book because it was in this window in St. Andrews,
Mm.
and I think it was signed copies that they had in this little bookstore. And then I was reading the book and said to my friend who'd gone to school in St. Andrews, I said, "This is brilliant. I love this." And she said, "Oh, I went to school with her." For one
Oh,
of the authors,
wow.
and I was like, "Oh my God, that's so cool!" But phenomenal, phenomenal book, and just the importance of saying now,
Mhm.
as women in our 50s, and again, you're saying that people are going at all different ages, but the importance, this idea that we have a certain amount of time is a delusion. It is nothing guaranteed, and it's so important to lean into the magic of now and to choose to do the thing that's going to bring us joy. And I love how you had the flicker and this idea of your head in the clouds, and you just need to ask. You just need to make the ask to the witches. You need
Mhm.
to like reach out and do the thing, and then allow the universe to surprise you with a yes, which
Yes.
is people want to say yes.
Mhm.
They want to say
And
yes.
believing it's possible.
And that's
Yeah.
the first step, isn't it? That believing that and trusting and just saying, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to ask and I'm going to count on myself that this is going to be possible for me.
Yes.
So tell me, just as we're beginning to wrap up, just a couple more questions. If you were giving some advice or some inspiration to somebody who's listening to this episode and they're thinking, you know, they've been told they've got their head in the clouds, or they've been told, oh, just be realistic, but they have something that's pulling at them that they feel like, oh, I just want to give it a shot. What would you want them to hear from this?
I would want them to know that it's okay to let other people be uncomfortable about your dreams. And it doesn't, especially being a woman and, having a partner, being married, there's shared resources or it's a shared experience. And so I talked to you about when I quit my job and my husband, that was part of what we talked about. But I will tell you that when it happened, he was not happy about it. I think he was like, wait, you really did that? I had to let him be uncomfortable with it. I had to go through the motions in trying to help him. We spent time in therapy, but I was very clear that this was what I was doing. I had to be okay with that. It was uncomfortable, but I had to be okay because if I wasn't, I was going to completely lose myself. And I think that's the same for other women, that they always put everyone else ahead of them, whether it's their kids or their partner, or even if we have aging parents or we have these ideas or things that we've been told that we think, well, that's not for me, like that was never for me. Let all of that just sit and exist because you can't get rid of it, but you can move through it and you can do it yourself without, you don't need any of that.
Absolutely. Wise words. Allow them to be uncomfortable. And just finally, I always ask people who are guests on the podcast, what does choosing yourself
Yeah.
mean to you? What does that concept evoke or mean for you?
It's a hard one because as a woman, I'm not sure I've chosen myself too much over the years until recently. It does kind of go back a little bit to what I just said, which is allowing other people to be uncomfortable with my decisions. I think it also is connected to my intuition and really understanding like who I was created to be and what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's so easy to ignore it. And I ignored it for a long time, which is what led to burnout. Yeah, I mean, because I've done so much in an intuitive space, like I'm very in tune with my body. I can feel certain things, and I will feel when it's right and it's meant for me. I will feel like this fullness in my belly, which is like this really warm, full feeling. And when something isn't right for me, and I think, well, I can just push through and choose it anyway, I can feel it in my chest and my shoulders. I actually just had that experience last week where I was agreeing to something and I felt that feeling come in and I paused and I thought, okay, I'm going to revisit it tomorrow. And the next day I revisited it and then I had to let somebody, tell them no, which is still not easy, but the no to them was a yes to me. And it's still uncomfortable, but it's about just doing it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that and that whole holistic sort of view of it and how our body knows. And when we tune in like that, it's a really powerful messenger that's we need to learn to connect into for that deep, deep wisdom. Tell people, I'm going to share it in the show notes too, but tell people where it is best to get in contact with you, to learn about these amazing trips, to
Yeah.
get on your newsletter. And I know also that you have a podcast by the same name.
Yes.
And so if you can share a little bit about where's best
Yeah.
to contact you.
Yeah. So my website's cobblestonesandcastles.com. That's where I have all of the trip information, a little bit about me. I do have a podcast of the same name. I have not had a lot of episodes lately, only because I have so many clients traveling over the next few months, and I'm trying to get that side of the business completely wrapped up. But I do hope to be back and doing that soon. I'm also on TikTok and Threads, and I have the free community and on Facebook that is called the Cobblestone Collective. And that's where we have, some of the book studies and conversations about different things. It's just a fun group. We just talk a lot. I share updates like with kind of everything that was happening this weekend with travel. I try to share some updates in there. But yeah, we talk about the trips and being a woman. So
Fabulous. We'll share all of that in the show notes. For now, thank you so much for your time and sharing your journey and your fabulous travel experiences with us all.
yes,
Thanks so
thank
much,
you for
Sarah.
having me.
Thanks so much for tuning into the episode this week. I hope you got a lot out of it, and if you did, please share it with somebody who you feel would benefit. And leave a review. Always greatly appreciated. Lots of free and paid resources to take things a step further. You can find those in the show notes. And hey, if nobody has told you this yet today, you are amazing, and the world is a far more beautiful place because you're here with us all. Stay cool. Bye.